Hi there, welcome to the podcast. This week I'm with Joel. Joel is actually a biohacker. So if you listeners don't know what a biohacker is, Joel's going to explain a bit about it, but I would recommend reading about the bulletproof diet and everything that Dave Asprey does. I'm going to put the link in the description below. But yeah, I would recommend you listen to this. It's pretty much, how do you enhance your body and enhance your mind? And actually, it's like computer hacking, but for your own biology. So it's quite interesting. So without further ado, here's Joel. Hey, Joel, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, Alex? How are you? I'm doing excellent.
I'm doing good. I mean, circumstances, like we just talked about this, like circumstances makes the situation kind of, I don't know if it's nerve wracking or just like, we've never gone through such a situation before, and we're a different location. You're in LA, right?
San Francisco, California.
So, we have similarities in terms of, how our executives, let's say that way, are managing the region. Even though, from another fellow that I talked in California, you guys are looser on the confinement, but, at the end of the day, it's a unique situation and pretty much like a unique, we need to rethink how we're handling those nervous times, or those, situations. So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, like you said, it's an interesting time. The energy is just off. It's weird. There was a time where I was waking up at like 4 a.m. randomly, and I know I'm not the only one. And it's just this global energy. I think it's just shifted. And I think the hysteria needs to stop, and I think people need to find confidence in themselves again and realize that we're a lot more powerful than we think. And, it depends who you tune into. If you tune into the news and everybody out there, you're going to be getting the same message that you're not good enough. Coronavirus is killing people. And personally, I don't fall into that hype, man. And my mindset is so strong right now. I feel amazing. And I would like to pass that on to anybody. And I think that's where it starts, really, is just all in your mind.
Yeah. And I've decided, if it's new for us, it's new for media outlet as well. And, I perceive this as a pretty bad handling of the information right now. And, the news is, transmitted, and I don't think there's bad intention. It's just that everyone is going through like a new process, and they're doing. My guess, I hope, they're doing their best. But I've stopped listening to news. I pick kind of the most important bullet points by the end of the day, or early morning. But I tend to I completely stopped being just continuously watching and listening, and it makes you go freaking nuts. So I had that dashboard with the death toll and all that. Fuck that. Fuck that. I'm done.
So. We're early on in the podcast, Alex, and I don't know if I don't want to piss off your listeners right away, but I'll tell you this, and just all I would say is just detach for a second and just take like a bird's eye view of everything that's going around, right? And the thing about it really is there's some great people out there putting some great information out now, and these are doctors, of course, that I follow. And from my understanding, which, I'm not a doctor, so I only know so much, but from my understanding, they don't they don't even know if this is a coronavirus. So they've never actually purified it or isolated it correctly. So there's certain tests that you actually need to do, and they've never done that. Now they see exosomes that look like the coronavirus, so they're making assumptions, and maybe their assumptions are right. But it's just interesting to me that how can you create a vaccine off of something you haven't isolated and confirmed 100% that you've done this? And there's plenty of people you can go follow. I'm not, like I said, the doctors I follow is Dr. Cowan, Cowan. He's a functional medicine doctor here in San Francisco, actually. And actually, there's a great book that I'm reading called Virus Mania, which goes into a lot of the history of SARS, HIV, and other coronaviruses. So when you start to really learn about this information, I'm telling you right now, this coronavirus, it's really not that fearful.
It's funny because I did pandemic specials both in French and English, and I need to kind of do like the part 2 of that with both groups that I did it. And, at some point, I felt that, we were falling in bro science, but, by the time, it's been like 3-4 weeks already, for sure. But at the same time, 20 something days later or 30 something days later, I realized that, some of the information that gets out is bro science already, so even like a friend discussion around that subject matter becomes as relevant as any fucking conversation that can happen anywhere, so there are trustworthy people for sure, but it's just that in the masses of information coming in, it's really hard to decipher what's the bullshit from, what's the pure and bottom truth. And I think like you said it best when, most of the people don't know right now, so the,
right.
And journalism in the past, I would say like 10, 15 years, especially with network, with social networks, have become editorialists, they've become opinion-based journalists, and that shouldn't have any place in a current situation like that, right now.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right. Like, I like Bill Gates like anybody else, but he really should have no opinion in the matter. Like, he's donating and backing the WHO. So, of course he's going to have a biased opinion. Do I think Bill Gates is amazing? Yeah, absolutely. I think he's an amazing guy. But should he be talking about the virus? No, he should not be, because he's got a tainted, decision. I mean, he's got his own bias. We all have our biases, and I think that's something to be aware of,
And it's funny that you mention Bill Gates, because for me, in the case of Gates, it's one of the, I felt, and that's an impression, Joel, but I felt that he was probably one of the less tainted one. One of the I listened to Dr. Drew, for example, which tries and changes his mind, and admits it and say, hey, last week I said that, really sorry. I've read further, about it. Here's what I think, there's really like a, when I mentioned Bill Gates in terms of, the 5 years ago, he pretty much, gives us an heads up about this, about, guys, people, I think, it's not about if, it's about when, and, we're not prepared for it. And you guys, get ready. And, and it was just like, oh shit. Okay. He pretty much, warned us about this. Now, right now, I don't think it's about philanthropists to give us the advices we need. But at the same time, the 24/7 newscast is leaving us with just like sometimes it's just superlative at end of a sentence. Do we really want to go there? Do we really want to take that chance? That's not, that's not a journalist's job to ask us those fucking questions. There's something about like both the tone and I get it, journalism is quite monotonous, is quite actually boring. But you want to flavor it and spice it up by giving those superlative and those kind of intonation into really, don't doubt it. Like this is news.
I mean, I was watching the news today, and on Fox News, they had the title was Trump reopens states or something like that as death toll increases. I mean, it's just, I mean, I just laugh. I mean, like, this is completely, you're like saying like it's a good thing that we're opening, but then at the same time, you're kind of saying, well, people are dying, like this is a problem. And here's the thing, guys. Of course, people are going to keep dying when we reopen. So whether you pick May 1st as the date to open or May 19th or
Same
June
shit.
1st, what do you expect? What do you expect's going to happen? Like, yeah, of course, people like you're basically saying you're putting out a headline that in reality, we know this is to be true. But when you put, like you said, the superlative high headline, it causes fear. It causes panic. You know?
And like one of our, I want to close on this because I don't want to, like eat too much of our time.
Yes.
But like there was
go on all day about this.
you have no idea. So there was like that ex-hockey player that caught it, that caught the COVID, and I'm not kidding, but it was in French, and Journal de Montréal actually showed front page this player sitting on his hospital bed with two thumbs up, big smile, but the title was actually Georges Larac is fighting for his life.
Right.
He caught a fucking flu. Like, let's be honest here. Like, it's a flu.
Not the flu. That's serious.
And I get it, but like if it, like as far as we know, he doesn't get he doesn't have asthma. He doesn't have any complications. Subject to like more complications. Like it doesn't have any of the stuff that we should be worried about. Like him dying but if like people tend to just read titles. This is a title that like just induce that this guy is actually dying and he's not. So we should stop and naturally that guy is all over the social networks and it's stuff out here like like okay, so you're reinforcing that idea that like you really are going through a tough time. And to be quite honest with you, Joel, I think my wife and I and my son caught it something like 2-3 weeks before it started. Like being like majorly broadcasted and like published, just because like the flu we caught, it is so hard that like after reading like the huge list of symptoms that like they've like that goes all over the place, like stuffy nose, not stuffy nose, coughing, not coughing, sour throat, not sour throat, fever, not fever, blah blah blah, like, but just the fact that like for my wife is asthmatic and like she needed way more of her like her pumps and stuff, and on my side it was easy 5-6 days that like I had a hard time even standing up, and my wife was over 10 days, and like she needed, like I said, almost twice the supply of her asthma pumps. And my son ended up with an ear infection because it kind of like he was super high fever for a few days, and then it became an ear infection. And after reading about it, I'm like, my taste bud weren't working so good. Like my sense of smell wasn't, like 100%. And so I'm assuming that we got it already, like, so I feel bulletproof right now, which is a good thing. But yeah, then again, like we don't have right now, like we don't have testing for the antibodies. So I can't tell for sure, but, yeah, it's a tough situation. So to answer your questions, I'm doing as good as I can be doing.
That all came from just how are you doing?
Yeah,
this
can
is
you
great.
imagine? So as I do every week, 14 minutes in, as I do every week with my guests, I'm gonna leave it pretty much to you to let me know what page and of that life storybook do we open it to? Where do we begin that story?
Yeah. I was thinking where we could go in this conversation because, man, there's so many ways to go. And, I think, for your show, is cold turkey, right? It's like, when did you make that decisive moment where you said enough was enough and I'm going to go another route. I'm going to go another
Yep.
way. I'm going to choose this to be in my life, right? And so for me, I think that has happened for me really maybe in the last couple of years, kind of going through a bigger transition. I have been a police officer in two major metropolitan cities in California, and I've been doing that for 13 years. And anytime if you become a police officer, I think most people say that's a great career. You get a pension. Wow, you should, you do that till you're 30 years old or whatever. I mean, sorry, not 30. You do that for 30 years or 25 years. You get a great pension and you retire and you live a great, prosperous life, right? That's what they tell you. So for me, in the last, oh man, I don't know, at least since the birth of my son. So my oldest son is 6 years old. I've um, I've really been feeling a lack, from my profession. I've been feeling that it's not fulfilling me the same way it was when I first started. And so for me, my turning point really is starting new endeavors and launching my side business, which I hope to make a full-time business, and that's through coaching, health coaching. And as well, I just recently got certified to be a newbie practitioner, which a newbie is an electric stim device that uses a DC current. So this current is actually mimics our body, and it can help with rapid healing, rehab, optimizing just muscle recruitment. And it's what people in the quote unquote biohacking world are big in, and that's a world that I'm into as well. And they're using this device to really, you see it from, I mean, people with MS, multiple sclerosis, that are having difficulties walking, people with TBI that have like some neurological issue with maybe movements, even paralyzed people, or an ACL injury or something like that. These people are recovering much more rapidly. They're starting to walk again. There's one guy I know, he actually ripped his pec muscle, and the doctor said, "You got to have surgery, man." And he went on this machine, did his rehab. I don't remember for how long. And the next thing you know, he never had surgery, and he went back to benching 500 pounds. This guy's a pretty big dude.
But
So
I have to
that's where I'm
I
at.
have to rewind that tape, Joel. Where are you from?
Absolutely.
What's your upbringing? Upbringing like. What. Because that's major. That's a major change in your life. You're almost like blue collar. Is that how we would define like a police officer? Like that.
I would say that you're 100% correct. I would say the typical police officer is a blue collar person. I definitely don't consider myself that, nor have I ever considered myself that. But yeah, I definitely agree. Like that's a great generality for our profession.
Exactly. So, like coming from, my guess is that your upbringing should show, like kind of that, like routinely way of doing things. Or I could be completely wrong, but like maybe rewind a bit of, like what's your upbringing like, like the siblings, family, all that.
Yeah, so I come from a family. It was just me and my brother, but I'm 8 years older than my brother. Before my parents actually had him, he was not an accident. It was totally planned. It's just my parents waited a long time before they wanted another child, and so I was always the older brother. For me, when I look back at my childhood, I think something that as an adult, I look at, and I do a lot of self reflection as an adult because I'm always trying to improve and get better. But I can tell you that when I turned 18 years old, I remember I graduated high school and I felt completely lost. And my friends were graduating from high school. They were going to Stanford, UC Berkeley. UC Davis, Cal, Stanford. I don't know if I already said that. They were going to these top schools, and yours truly was going nowhere. And it wasn't that I didn't do well in school. I was on a path to just go to school, get good grades. I was told that all my life, and more or less I did that, but I had no real plan of what was going to happen after high school. And after high school, you're kind of out of your little
Yeah.
bubble, and it's time to get out there and do something. And it's like, what are you going to do? So I had to make a decision. I almost joined the military. Um, but I ended up backing out at the last second. Not that I didn't want to. I really did. I felt it would be a great honor to serve our country, and I was totally motivated to do it. I just kind of took a step back and was looking at what some friends were doing, and I thought, you know what? Let me just go to a junior college and buy myself another 2 years to kind of really figure out and explore what I want to do.
What were your parents doing for a living? What yeah.
Yeah, so here's the ironic thing. My father was a police officer. My grandfather, before him, his father was a San Francisco police officer.
Yeah.
So perhaps it was in my genes to be a police
exactly.
officer.
And we hear that often,
know.
right? Like, especially for law enforcement, that, like, it's a generation by generation kind of almost a vocation.
Yeah, there's I think what happens is there's an attraction to it because they see their dad do it and they want to do it. Now, the ironic thing for me is I never, as a young kid, I thought I probably wanted to do it because I just thought chasing bad guys was great. But for me, it never was about that.
Or a calling. You didn't have a calling?
No, and not really. Well, I graduated and I started getting into business and sales. So I thought, oh, well, maybe the entrepreneur route is something I need to do. Again, it was never about really what did I want to do as a person. I didn't know. I was exploring. I still needed more time. They tell you when you graduate high school, it's like, all right, you need to have a major picked out and you need to go into that major, and then you get a career, and then you get a wife and a white picket fence, and then you have kids, and then that's your life. And looking back on it, I just didn't know. I didn't know what I wanted. And so when they put a gun to my head and said, well, you got to pick a major and figure out what you want to do, I said, you know what? I really like doing stuff with my mind and my body. So I said, maybe I'll be an FBI agent, because I thought I don't want to be a local police officer like my dad, because he's my dad and like I'm better than him. So
Yeah.
so I should do something way more sexier and cooler than what he does. You know what? I'm going to be an FBI because those guys are way better than the local police officers. And so I applied for the FBI, but they never called back, and it's a long process to get hired through them. And so I just stopped caring about them, and I ended up applying for local law enforcement because my dad suggested it. He actually said, you'd be really good at it. You should probably try that. And if you still think you want to be an FBI agent one day, then go ahead and pursue that. Otherwise, don't. I think you'll really like it. And, parents know their kids a lot better than than we like to think or admit. And he was 100% right. I absolutely fell in love with the profession. I tell the story that I met a lot of FBI agents and people that work for the federal government during my travels. And honestly, this is not to take shots at them, but this is just the way I like to talk. And I'm just very open and candid. And I completely found them to be, I found them to be nerds. I found them to be losers. I wasn't impressed by them at all, and I'm really happy that what I got to do, and I say that with a lot of tongue in cheek and just being funny.
Yeah.
But
and at the same time, my guess is that like there wasn't much, like the anti-conformist or rebellion in you. Like where like you saw that as like a path to follow because you were just you just didn't know where to end up or where to go with that. Like with your career path, like the fact that like it's almost like it sounded like almost like a last resort at the time.
Yeah. I mean, in many ways, it might have been. Like I said, I was big into martial arts, and I was a young 20-year-old who had a lot of testosterone and a lot of vigor, and like I said, I thought, I really want to do something where I can use my mind and body. And I thought the spirit of police work could help hone that. And it totally did. I thought this is a great combination of, you got to be smart, but you also have to be, you can use your body. You're running out of the car, you're jumping after people. And that is, and you know what? It was all those things. And like I said, yeah, I did martial arts for a long, long time. And I thought, oh, this would be cool to test my skills against bad guys. Right. So there was a little ego there. And
so because you
yeah,
gave us the punch of, like you pretty much flipping this, how long did you do that? Like like how long did you do, and how happy were you doing it?
You're talking about police work? So actually, I'm still employed. I still work as a police officer.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so I still do it. And when I'm at work, I work hard, but I have other passions now. I think that's my point. And I'm trying to, cultivate that and create that right now, as a father. We were talking before, you have a 4-year-old, I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so, being a father and the sole provider of the family, there's a lot to be said with that. I can't just quit my job and go after my other dreams. The beautiful thing I think about all of this is that we evolve as people. And I think you go through evolutions of your life, whether it be a marriage, whether it be your career, things change. You change as a person, and it's okay to move on and evolve and do different things. And when you stay stuck in an environment that's not fulfilling you, there's just going to be either something's going to happen, something's going to have to give, right?
Yeah, and like so getting the pretty much the next question I have is, when did you start feeling stuck?
Great question. Here's the thing with police work has changed so dramatically over 13 years since I started. Every police officer will tell you that. Well, it's not what it used to be when I started. Now they're making us do this. Let me tell you something. That's true for any police officer, whether they started in the 1950s when my grandfather was a police officer, till every year it's changing. And police officers always think, oh, they're screwing us. They're making us do this now. Here's the thing. Police work it's a selfless job. And especially now, like, there's no greater time where the media actually absolutely hates us and responds and just, tells, just like with the coronavirus, right? It's one way. It's just a very biased way. And I can give you examples of just, coming home from work and watching the 10 o'clock news and seeing the headlines or the stories that they would report. And I'm like, I was at that call. I'm like, that didn't happen. I'm like, I'll say this: 50% of what you're telling happened. The other 50% you purposely left out because you wanted to make it a news story. So it's just a very challenging time. I think for me, what happened was a culmination of things. One, I left my department that I once started with, and I moved to another major city to do police work there. Secondly, I had my first child. Third, I just started learning more about health and just really started embodying it. And just, I started seeing people around me. Like, my mother got breast cancer. My mother-in-law had severe thyroid issues. I'm watching all these people around me suffer. And I thought, there has to be a better way, man. There's so many different types of healing out there, different modalities that people they're not even aware of.
Even though you were in good shape, no? You just said it, like you were.
Say that again?
Even though you were in good shape already, you already took care of yourself.
Yeah, I never had anything too major. I mean, hey, as a kid, I grew up on Twinkies.
Yeah.
I would have a soda. Every day when I came home. When I was in 6th grade, so I was about 10 years old, 11 years old, I had this knot in my leg. My parents thought, oh, I played a lot of baseball. So they said, you know what? You probably got hit by a baseball, just like a bruise or something. Well, that bump never went away on my inner thigh. So they took me to the hospital, and the doctor said, oh, your son has an abnormal bone growth. Yeah, he's got a bone just growing out the wrong side of his leg. Now, there's nothing normal about that. Now, if I were now as a big health guy that I am now, and as much as I've read and learned, yeah, he's 100% right. But bones don't just grow abnormally for no reason. So there was some reason that that happened. I don't know what the reason was. Was it toxic metals? Was it my poor diet as a kid? All these things, right? It's this is, where I came from, and yeah, I didn't have any health problems when my mother was getting sick or anything. No, but I want to help people that do have these problems. My mission in life has changed from, helping people in the setting of police work to helping people from a health perspective. I do life coaching as well. So from, whether it's your goals or blind spots that you don't see or things that blocks that are limiting you, these are the areas that I want to serve people now. So I think that's the big turning point for me is like, hey, my mission has it's shifted. It's completely changed.
And I guess, those family events that you just described, because I've gone through, like a major change myself after the girlfriend of my stepdad, a few years away from her own pension, actually got lungs cancer, and she actually, she died from it. But initially, I remember being like I'm 6 foot, so I think I was smoking over a pack a day, just not handling myself well, let's say that way. And
Yep.
that was enough, even though I had, there was no, I mean, as much proximity as you can have from, someone that, it doesn't live with you. I mean, I knew her, but, it wasn't like I had a relation with her, so, or, if there was a relation, it was kind of a, that, well, my stepdad girlfriend, but it,
Right.
it felt on a kind of 100 feet bird view of it, it felt like a fucking tragedy for me. I felt like
Yep.
it was bad. And I remember that, it was enough for me to say, okay, I have to do something about myself. I don't want to end up in that same situation. And, I decided to take care of myself and, lose all that, I think I was like something like, I stopped counting at 240 or something like that, and which is far from being like the healthy weight. And, just, handled myself, in a much better way. And, and found like obstacle racing, like the Spartan race and all that, which was kind of a motivator
Yeah.
for me to, okay, I got this scheduled, and, I'm going to have to do those 15K, and climbing a mountain and, just, so since I've paid for the friggin' ticket, I had to be in shape to do it,
Yep.
so it became kind of a forced objective that I gave myself. And more recently, when my child was born, well, naturally you give it a bit of a break because you're overwhelmed with all the scheduling and all. Sorry. Even though I already had two older kids that I knew what it was all about, in terms of how much time consuming that can be. And it's only last year that I just saw myself going, crawling slowly back to where I was a few years back, which, was something like 10 years back. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not going back there. I'm definitely not going back there. And, so it's super recent that I decided to just get back on reading more about, the food and, all that, which I had let go for a while. And I couldn't feel better than I am right now. And I'm 45 and, I think I've never been as much in shape, but at the same time, there are elements and just I don't want to be out of breath when I'm running after my child, like, so that would be enough of a motivator. And then I think the first week that I started training again, I already bought myself something like a 15K on some mountains a few hours from here. And, like in June, I think in
Nice.
June or July. And I knew that, well, like you've got this, like, so you've got that engagement
Yep.
scheduled, and, like you better be ready, or you're going to just pay the price and suffer. At the end of it, like there's no way I'm not going to finish the race, like, so unless I would, like break myself, like to, and I mean by that, like breaking a bone. But, like if it's not for that, like I'm going to ramp it to the finish line if I need to. So, like, yeah, I mean, like that, like there are motivators that you can find. Like you need to pretty much keep your mind open to any kind of motivation. And, like, so I can definitely relate to what you're saying. Like you're like seeing people close to you or not even so close to you, actually falling for something that they could have prevented sometimes, makes your life choices much easier.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, your kids, it's a perfect example. Seeing my mom, seeing my mother-in-law, seeing people close to me, being hurt. They, cancer. That's a big way for someone to put a chink in their armor, and it really sets home this message of like, man, I'm fragile. It's like, holy cow, like there's, you know, there's, like I said, a chink in my armor. Like I'm I'm not perfect. Like this thing could wipe me out. There's those thoughts, right? And so for me to see that and feel powerless in the sense like, oh, I can't do anything. I just that didn't sit well with me. And so how can I get better and learn more about health so that I can protect the people around me? I can create, if these ailments or these issues come up, no problem. I know the protocols. I know how to do this. I know why you may have got cancer. Like that's where my mind went. And like I said, there's so many tools right now in like the world of biohacking, which I'm not sure if you're that familiar with, but people are doing amazing things. Like even with this coronavirus, people are doing ozone therapy, for example. They're using that as ozone is O3. So O2 is oxygen, but then O3 is ozone. So it's like a free radical, but it will pretty much kill anything, including like some of these viruses and stuff. So people are using that, and not mainstream media. No one's talking about that. And so like these are the people that I like to hang out and have conversations with, people that are doing stuff differently, people that are, here, let me give you another one there. I have a friend who put me on this, especially with the corona. She's nebulizing this thing called biomolecular oxygen. So she's like nebulizing in a nebulizer, which you can buy for like $40, 40 US dollars, super cheap. And you can nebulize hydrogen peroxide if you wanted. Like that'll help disinfect, clean out your lungs. Or you could do this stuff. Like it's a little bit more expensive, this stuff that one of my friends who's a nurse has called biomolecular oxygen. And it helps, oxygenate the tissues. Oxygen, like most things like cancer, can't live in a highly oxygenated state. So if you can help supply your body with this form of biomolecular oxygen, it's going to be a good thing, right? So like this just perks me up. These are the things that make me alive again.
Can you elaborate on biohacking? Because like I know a bit about it. Like I've read, and like I've got my kind of my own research around it. Like and like I leverage some of the findings that I did, from like from reading some of the like some of the like Tim Ferriss and Dave Asprey, and like all these people that like are really deep into that. But like, can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, so at the simplest form, everybody knows Dave Asprey because he's like the father of modern day biohacking. And he's, as far as I know, he's the one who's actually coined the term biohacking, which is really just a fancy way of saying, hey, taking control of your own biology. Now, Dave Asprey comes from like a computer background, so like a hacker kind of background. So he talks about, hacking your biology basically. How do you do that? You do things like ozone therapy or red light therapy or sauna therapy, or people are drinking molecular hydrogenated water, all these different modalities that, again, you don't hear in the mainstream media. There's other countries like Germany and other places you might hear them doing ozone therapy, but it's not offered. I'm not sure how it is in Canada, but I know here in the United States, that's definitely not pushed. We're pushed with pharmaceuticals and shots and things like that. There's no one really trying to get to the root cause of the problem. And that's the kind of work that I like to do. I like to go deep, get to the root cause, and figure out really what's wrong with people or what's causing their body to be out of balance. Because the fact of the matter is, once you balance the body, you could do anything. You could take on coronavirus. You could take on any ailment. And that's why I, for one, I'm not worried about it, because I feel like my body's balanced. I'm confident. I feel great. My mind is right. I'm not worried about this.
Do you I know that you just gave a few example here, like I use, like for example, I use the and I don't know what the exact term, but like the studded mat, like like I use that before going to sleep, like where, like it activates through acupuncture some of the of my back's points, and like, but it actually, like, I just, like took it out. It was actually stored, like in one of my drawers. And, like I took it out, I think a month ago, and realized that, I sleep like a friggin' baby when I use it. So, like it's right next to my bed right now. And, I give myself, it's kind of a homework to actually, like lay on it for at least 40 minutes. But, like, this is just like a simple example of, taking bits and pieces of, like the stuff that I read, and, the use of some of the food, and like the G that, like I think Asprey was, like really big on, like that clarified butter, and like there are stuff that, like we much later in some, even in some diets, like I'm thinking about ketogenic diet, which, like then introduced to back, like like I had heard about, like the MCT oil way before it started being popular, like Asprey talked about this, like just like 6, 7, 8 years ago. And, like, it's just recently that, like Costco started selling it, and, like now it's the shit, he's like, well, hold on here, like that, like it was the shit a while ago. So where, like, where does those researches originates? Like when did you start looking into that?
So it all happened, like I said, around the time my son was born. So he truly is a gift, I think, because maybe I wouldn't have even gone down this route. So, like any new parent, this going into parenthood, that you're not supposed to do this, but you do it anyway. And so, my son, he was our first child, and lo and behold, I didn't want it. I didn't want him to cry during his naps.
Yep.
So what did Dad do? Instead of putting him down in his crib and letting him cry and just falling asleep, yours truly would hold him for 2 hours and just sit in a chair, and I would put him in like the crook of my arm, rock him to sleep, and I would just hold him there for 2 hours until he woke up, and I would just sit in the chair. So I'm sitting in this chair, but I'm like, if you know me, you know that it's like I'm a doer, man. I like to like learn. I got to be growing and learning all the time. And I'm sitting in this chair, and I'm just like, I got to be doing something with my time, man. If I'm going to be here for 2 hours, like something needs to happen. So don't know how I got into it. I was always big into Tony Robbins and stuff, but at the time, there was no way I could get like Tony Robbins on my iPhone. So I I stumbled across podcasts. I'm like, oh, look at all these podcasts. All these guys are like interviewing great people. So I found Lewis Howes at the time, who has this podcast called School of Greatness. And I stumbled across Dave Asprey somehow. I don't know how. I don't know how that even happened. It was serendipitous, I guess. And, next thing you know, I found him. I found Ben Greenfield. Then I got into this whole podcast like cult. Like you said, you listen to like 30 different podcasts.
Yep.
Yeah, that was me for a while. I just had to recently kind of trim down my list because it was getting out of hand. But that's how I got started. I started learning about Asprey, and then I just I went deep. I got hooked, I became like a groupie. Became just, really just went deep and started learning as much as I could about it, read his books, became a human potential coach through Dave Asprey's program. And a lot of what he was saying made sense. And I wanted to learn more about it. And it just fed this new, life and energy into my world and what I was really just passionate about, health and just movement. And I think another thing too is, as an active person, I've been a martial artist for a long time. I've done jujitsu. I've done a lot of boxing. As being a police officer, I've hurt myself a lot. I've had a lot of injuries, and I was never satisfied with the doctor's normal response of like, "Oh, well, yeah, that's an issue. Just go get a cortisone shot." That didn't fly with me because like I said earlier, I go back to what's the root cause of stuff. There has to be a root cause reason.
Yep.
So those are the people I started seeking out. I started paying a lot more money to go seek out specialists like ART specialists, which is an active release therapy specialist. Different kind of modalities, chiropractors, acupuncturists. I started going down this route looking for other people to help heal me from some of my injuries and really just being curious and asking why. Like, why is this happening to me? Why does my left shoulder hurt and my right hip hurt? Like, is there any correlation? These are the things that I find them fascinating and I could just do it for free. And so like I said, I just kept going down this route and then I felt really good about all the information I was learning. And I said, okay, I think you reach a point, like I said earlier, 20 years old, I was full of testosterone and vigor and had a lot of big ego. And I think that's just normal as we evolve as humans. That's the normal male kind of thing. You're like, I have a big ego. You want to fight? Okay, let's fight. Whatever. Right. And yeah, having kids and just growing older and learning more about myself and seeing my own blind spots and where I make mistakes, you start to calm down. You start to be humble. And it's not about me anymore. Like, it's about helping other people and serving others. Like, how can I make them powerful? Like, I've learned a lot. How can I give this back to them? And that's what really just motivates me right now. And like, that's like the flame that has got me going.
And for the sake of listeners, like I spoke about, like I talked about Tim Ferriss, and Tim Ferriss wrote a few books, like it's not just like biohacking, but like it's, like he does like lifestyle hacking and all that. Like he's pretty much an explorer. Ferriss has done the four.
Well, Tim wrote so you're right, Alex. Tim wrote the 4-Hour Body for anybody that wants to check out that
4-hour work week, 4-hour body, 4-hour chef. I've read through them like a maniac, like the 4-hour chef is something like it looks like it's so thick, like it's a huge book, but it's so interesting just for the approach. Like it doesn't mean that you need to mimic everything that's in there. It's just that the research and the approach and and I've read Asprey's book as well. Like there are a few individuals that if any of the listeners are interested in looking into that, you have to know that there are multiple people that I've explored and have pretty much opened that path, and like they're going to let you kind of decide for yourself, like what makes more sense. But the 4-hour body is a bestseller, has been a bestseller for a while now, and like it's just so interesting to read where this guy's from, what he has accomplished, and what he has done in terms of, the decided to learn new language when he was like, I think in his 30s or 40s, and, decided to become, I think like something like a world champion tango dancer or something like that, like in a short amount of time. And, like all kinds of ways that he's kind of hacking into his brain and hacking into his own body to see how you can manipulate as you do. And he comes from iTech as well, Ferriss. So there's correlation between, like the way he's pretty much spent his life, then what he decided to dedicate his life to now. And like it's interesting individuals that, like I encourage people to go read into. The other thing I have to ask you, Joel, is it's, like great for you to initially be interested in that and improve yourself, but where does the need to share that knowledge and to actually, like help others, even though like your job, you do that in your job, and like like being a like like a police officer, like you help others, but like in terms of that new passion that you found in biohacking, where does like reaching out to helping other people came about?
That's a great question, because I know in your podcasts, you like to go deep. You like to figure out, hey, what makes this person tick? And so for me to do that, I have to kind of just think like, where did that come from at an early age? I don't know. Did my parents instill that into me? Maybe. I don't know. But off the top of my head, it's probably something more simpler than that. It's probably, if I were evaluating myself, there's probably some selfish reasons. Maybe it's just that, I've heard somebody else say this, and so that's why it's making me self-reflect in this moment, that maybe that's where I get that from, and the sense of wanting to control my life, wanting to control a lot of things. That can be great for like biohacking, right? Like that can be amazing, because yeah, you're taking control of your own health. You're steering the ship. You're not letting these doctors just inject you with shots and it's not going to do anything. Like that can be really helpful, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, maybe that's also a crutch of mine, right? Like that's where it's like your need to control. That's why you like police work, because you get to, you can control some things, right? Um, was there somewhere in my life where I probably felt out of control, right? Like I didn't have control when I graduated high school and I didn't know what I was going to do, right? I didn't have that control. Um, so, like I said, I mean, maybe on a deeper level, there's something like that where it comes from. I know for me, there was just a point in my life where I just, like I said, it all kind of culminated at the same time when my son was born, and this, when you have a child, you change. You may not change, but most people, I think, change tremendously. And when you have a child, it really just becomes not about you. And you're just like, no, you're no longer really that important. Like all your goals, all your dreams, is like, it kind of comes to be about them, right? You're cultivating and creating the best human you can possibly create. And so when you take a seat back, your ego just takes a seat back. Your ego just starts to dissolve a little bit, because you humble yourself. It's this amazing being that you're trying to raise. And I think that's very humbling for most people. And then, like I said, I just did a lot of self work and just realized, again, it's not about me. It's about, I've got a lot of successes, but at the end of the day, like, who cares? Like, what is that going to matter on my deathbed? Who cares about that? Like, what legacy am I going to leave on this world? Is that what he made a lot of money or something? He bought a house. I mean, he bought an expensive car. Like, who cares, right? Like, he bought all this expensive biohacking equipment. Who cares? Like, what I want to do is share that with people. And I think, it's the selfish truth about it is I get such a high off watching other people heal in front of me, watching other people, watching them walk better, because I use my newbie machine to help them change their gait and improve their back pain. Or if it was just a simple supplement, or I looked at their life and gave them some perspective to help bring clarity to their life. That's that's such a huge reward, and it's a selfish reward. And like, it's a joke. I mean, really, when you think about it, right, you kind of laugh. I mean, sometimes I like to just go out and buy coffee or something for somebody randomly in line, and they're like, "Oh my god, thank you so much." And I'm like, I'm the one. I'm selfishly doing it for myself. You know this, right? Like, I'm buying you coffee because it makes me feel good more than than it does you. It's like, it's beautiful. It's just like law of reciprocity, right? And just law of just attraction and, putting out that energy and giving it back into the world, you just get so much more in return.
And so when you pretty much, like make the decision of sharing that knowledge and, like letting people, trying to reach out and help people, where do you start? Like how do you, like, like you talked about, like taking certification with the Esprits and, some individuals like that, but where do you start?
Here's the thing. Everybody wants you to just come and fix them right away. So everybody wants to just give me the magic pill, give me this and give me that. And guess what? It doesn't work that way. It takes hard work and it takes some dedication. I am a biohacker. I love to hack stuff, but I say this constantly. I have a podcast, by the way, called The Hacked Life, because that's how much I love biohacking. But make no mistake about it, I'm no fool about that, because biohacking is great, but you can hack the shit out of your body and hack this and that. You'll never fix it. You got to go deep, man. Like we talked about, you got to get to the root cause, and that takes some exploration. That takes some time. I had this guy recently. He's in a Facebook group that I belong to, and it's a biohacking Facebook, and he posted something about something about his mouth or something, and he's like, "Hey, I got these white spots in his mouth," and I'm looking at him like, "Yeah, that looks like candida to me," which is a type of yeast, and that's a common symptom for someone that has candida. And so he posts on the biohacking forum. He's like, "Hey, he's reaching out. Anybody can help me. I've tried this, I tried that, I did this. Nothing seemed. It worked for a little bit, and then didn't work." And then he said, "And by the way, don't tell me that I have candida, because I don't." He's like, "I went to like some specialist doctor, blah, 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 and they told me I don't have it." So I text him. I said, "Hey man, I'd love to coach you for free. Just let me just hear your story. I want to learn about you," right? So that's the key right there. Hearing the story, finding out everything about this person, just like we're finding out about me, right?
Yep.
You could have just asked me some superficial questions right from the beginning. We could have asked, "Oh, Joel, you have this biohacking. Tell me how great you are with this bio." Who cares, right? Like that's great. That's a superficial, surface level thing. Yeah, you could talk about me and my biohacking machine all day long. You didn't ask that. You wanted to know more. You wanted to know the why behind it all, and that's what I do. So, for example, with this guy, we talked for an hour, and I found out everything. And he told it was amazing. Like during his conversation, I learned so much about him that no normal doctor is going to learn about, because what do? They see you for 5 minutes and they try to give you a symptom and diagnose you and then kick you out the door. Not me. I spent an hour with this guy just wanting to listen to him, just wanting to hear what he had to tell me about his life and what he was around, the stresses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So lo and behold, he tells me, "Hey, you know what? That doctor, that specialist that I saw," he's like, "Man, I can't believe all these things you're telling me." He's like, "The doctor I saw was like some famous doctor in Spain, but like she was trash." He told me. He's like, "She didn't even know about leaky gut." I'm like, "Dude, how does she not know that?" Right? And then he tells me, they told me it's not candida, but he's like, "I don't really even trust them." So it's funny because, again, if you had just looked at his post and I tried to give him some simple hack, I could have been like, "Oh yeah, try this." But I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it for 1 second. I go, "No, dude, I'm looking at your mouth. Like, you have candida. I don't care what the doctor said. Like, your gut is messed up." And even he told me after the hour, he's like, "I know you're right." But he told everybody on the Facebook post, "Don't tell me it's candida. It's not candida." I'm like, "It's candida. That's what it is." By the end of the hour, he's like, "Yeah, you're right." Because we went deep. I learned about a lot. Then check this out. Even after that, he tells me, "Hey, by the way, I forgot to mention, I got this tooth that I never really fixed, and it's like leaking, kind of like oozing, like just nasty stuff out of it, right? It's like a dead tooth. Do you think, Joel, that has any effect with my neurological issues that I'm experiencing?" and some of these other things. Now, of course, mind you, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not allowed to treat him or anything like that. I just give him health recommendations, which is actually great because it allows me to do a lot more than some doctors, because doctors are constrained to protocols and that they have to adhere to. Not me. I just give recommendations. So, needless to say, I was like, yeah, 100%. That's a huge problem. Like, people don't understand this, but like a tooth is like more than just a tooth. Like, it's a living organism. Like, it connects to your lymphatic system. There's nerves that run up through your TMJ, which could cause neurological issues. Like the TMJ, that's a huge circuits of nerves, right? I don't want to get too into this, but like, there's a doctor that does neurological, there's a neurological dentist that I've actually seen for some jaw issues that I had. This guy has healed so many people with like autism and just learning ADD, ADHD, learning issues, all by fixing just the jaw, the arrangement of the jaw. So now you got this tooth that's fungus or whatever is leaking out of it, right? It's just pus and toxins are just leaking into your body. Yeah, if we didn't have this conversation, he may not even had any awareness about like he knew he's been dealing with it for so long. He just kind of forgot about it. Like, yeah, I got this tooth. So, anyways, we went deep, and I was like, yeah, all these things you told me, like, yeah, I take oregano oil for my gut. I told him that's great, but that ain't gonna heal your candida. It might help a little bit, but that ain't gonna heal that. Like, you got to have a system in place, and it's got to be like I tell people, like, you got to be like a SWAT team. You got to have a plan of action, and you got to attack this thing in so many different ways, not just some. Yeah, I took some oregano oil. I heard Joel's podcast. I took some biomolecular oxygen. I'm feeling kind of better, but never got rid of it. So that's what it's all about, man. You got to go deep and in anything in life, right? You got to go deep in you got to ask yourself why, and you got to be curious. It's like, hey, if your marriage isn't working out, well, why not? Do you just complain immediately and be like, oh, that stupid woman like that, or stupid man, whatever whatever it is in your life? Do you immediately blame them? And then when you do blame them, ask yourself why. Wow, like why do I immediately get triggered by that? Why do I say that? It's all about awareness, man. It's all about awareness.
And so coming to the like coming to the top of the hour, like, what's next for you now? Like, so where do you want to bring this? What's your aspiration in terms of like the near or not so near future? Like the idea of like, do you have like grand scale like dreams about this? Like the it's my guess is that like those movements, and I call that a movement, really not in a pejorative way at all. Like I've been like I've read thoroughly to some of those, and like I truly believe that they are genuine options to make a better living, and not but be a better human being in terms of the like the biology of your own, like of your own body. Like I truly believe in it. Like I'm an adept. I don't take 100% of it necessarily. Like some of it is, like there is stuff in there that's quite exhaustive, and like you need to both invest yourself really. Like there are stuff that your first reading is going to be like, oh shit, like that's that looks like like that looks, we're so used to the traditional approach to some of these solutions that we like the first few read are like are tough because like we're programmed to see it some other ways, but yeah, I mean, where do you want to take this?
Yeah, great point. Just to kind of finish off what you said, you're right. It's all programming, and that's what it takes. It takes some awareness, and it takes a lot of self-reflection on yourself, and realizing like, wow, like I was programmed this way from 0 to 6 to be this way. Like when I get triggered by my wife or whatever, my partner, man, where is that emotion coming from? Like you have to ask yourself that, because that's the only way you're going to get better. And you're right. We're programmed by the news. We're programmed from who we were as a child, how our parents were to us, how we were being. And that can be the trajectory for our life, our entire life. if we let it be. And so it takes that awareness and that skill to kind of detach and course correct if you want to, right?
And you have to
So
be open-minded, as like all my guests have been, like the like the drug addicts that decided to take care of their own life, then, like decided to quit. And, like same for alcohol and panic attacks and anxiety. Like if you don't open your mind to other options, because, like at some point, like it could be comfortable. But you have to take that the bird eye view, of your situation, and, look at it and just have an open mind. And so that's what I love about, like like both the biohacking and, like all of what Tim Ferriss has written is, like he made his mind an open book of, like of writing and reading, and, like let's explore, let's see.
exactly. It's so true, man. It's just having a growth mindset and being curious and open. And a lot of people just aren't. And they don't ask themselves those questions, or the people think they are, but they're not. And yeah, I have no dog in the race. Like I say, I don't care. I'm open, like you said. I'm glad you said that. And it's all just about awareness and bringing fresh new ideas. Like, you don't have to do it my way. You can do it whatever way gives you results. I could care less. Like, that's what I want for you guys. Yeah, I want you to be happy. I want you to get good results. I don't care how you get there. So yeah, I couldn't say it any better.
And so,
As
yep.
far, yeah, go ahead.
No. I was about to ask you, like, where do you want to take this, that journey of
Yeah,
yours?
so where I see this going right now is, I've got a lot of things going on. I got a podcast going on, just like yourself. I I'm doing coaching, I'm doing life coaching, I'm doing health coaching for anybody that needs it. And that's what's really exciting is this is all virtual. I'm doing a lot of virtual health coaching, especially right now. Like, what a great time. Like, people need this, man. People are cooped up in their homes and quarantined, and they need like a sounding board, someone to talk to. It's like, who do you talk to? And I think we're going to see a lot of telemedicine start to become a big thing now, just because of this event. So I'm doing a lot of that already, and I just want to keep expanding that business as well. I'm looking at partnering with a chiropractor here in San Francisco, and I will be bringing my electro stim, is just the easiest way to explain it. And I'll be bringing that available so I can help people physically rehab from any, chronic injuries or anything they have that, or if they want to like I said, if they want to optimize their workouts or muscle. But that's the goal, is to bring these technologies and make them more available for people, especially on where we're at in San Francisco. Nobody has this machine, so I want to bring that out, and I want to bring some awareness of that, and just maximize the health coaching and life coaching.
And so, lastly, what's the name of the podcast, Joel?
It's called The Hacked Life.
Yep. And so that every listeners know, like everything that, like Joel's going to be providing in terms of, like websites and links and, like stuff that he does, and, like whatever he sends my way, I'm going to be sharing in the podcast description. So, like the episode description is going to contain all of those links. So you just need to scroll down and you're going to find it. Lastly, any advice, any like not words of wisdom, but like any stuff you want to leave as a conclusion?
Well, I think, the big message, the big takeaway, I think this entire episode, we went deep, and we talked a lot about awareness, and that's what it's all about. I mean, I think it really comes to that. I would say, for anybody, there was a quote I just heard the other day that I was reading, and it kind of struck me, and it said, if the path is clear ahead of you, you're on someone else's road. So
well said.
the message for me is, hey, if things are just so easy for you and going great, well, maybe you're on someone else's path. So again, I think that comes back to just awareness and being really open-minded and curious, and just asking why. And if you're not getting the results that you're getting, okay, great, go deep on it, or find someone else that can help me. It can be you, it can be you, it could be me, it could be some other chiropractor, or it could be anybody. I don't care who it is, but what I want you to get help. I want you to ask that why, so that you can live a fulfilling, prosperous life, right?
And like that's pretty much like the bottom line is to keep open minds. Like the fact that I read through, like the 4 Hour Body, or, like the Dave Asprey's Bulletproof book, like all of these things were just based on curiosity. Like, what is this all about? Like, though, so, I think, like at the end of the day, like we need to be just, because we opened up the podcast about this, like about the fact that, like even the people that should influence us changes their mind and changes their opinion and changes the information they transmit to us. So, like there's a reason for that, like it's that, like ideas evolves,
Yeah.
and like they progress in time, and like they change. So do the same with your own brain, like do the same with your own thinking and philosophy, and like what you think is an established fact, like may just be different by now, like as we speak, actually, like so um I started doing the ketogenic diet recently, like just for the sake of trying, like let's give it a try. Let's just, okay, that could be, could that be an option? Maybe. But just the fact that um, I'm kind of like I'm counteracting the nutritional guidelines, for me is kind of the unbeaten path that I'm
Yep.
following right now. Like, so for myself, I mean, like obviously there were people before me that, like I've written books and, like documented websites and blogs and so on. But what I mean is that even for my own body, I'm trying something that I've never tried before, like, and following some guidelines that I've never followed, because I was used to, like, okay, you should be drinking that many glasses of milk, and like, what I'm saying, like that,
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just challenging that myself, like, so challenging my own beliefs is, like, I think is the base of it all, like, so I want to, yep,
So critical.
yeah, it
So
is.
critical.
So I want to thank you, Joel, for participating in the podcast. So I could, like I always, people must be just fed up with me just saying the same thing. But like for me, it's just an humbling and it's a thankful experience for me to have guests. Like it's so weird. Like I've hit the 1 year mark last month, and I wouldn't have ever imagined having guests from Frisco or Australia or UK, like I would have never even dreamed of that, and seeing that, like I get, like first like the interest of people in participating in that journey, and for me to have a discussion with you, Joel, is just an humbling and thankful experience. And, like I thank you for being part of that. It's been a great hour that I just spent, and, like it's my guess is always, like if it's good for me, like it must be good for someone else, like, so it's always just,
Yeah.
like I like we discussed this before starting to record, but, like keeping this a casual conversation is just about that, like it's just about me thinking about, like what listeners would like to hear, and letting my guest, like go with the flow, and, like that's what you gave us, and I'm really thankful for that.
Alex, I feel floored myself. I mean, it's just so humbling. And you think about it just during this time, like I don't know you, you don't know me, and we just got to spend a great hour together. We're from different countries, and it's just moments like this that you just realize, man, the power of just human connection.
Yep.
And that's what it all is. That's what it all boils down to. I mean, we're two people on this micro level just connecting. Like you said, this is bringing that energy of just connection all around the world, and then the podcast is going to go worldwide, and we're all connecting in this global way from it. And it's beautiful. So yeah, thank you.
Really appreciate it. And again, for the listeners, like if you want to find Joel, like everything's going to be in the description. You're going to find his websites, like all the stuff he does. And again, thank you for your time, Joel, and I really appreciate it. And talk to you next time.
Alex, I appreciate it. And just one last thing for your listeners. If any of them are interested in any life coaching or health coaching, anything like that, I'm, especially during this time, I've cut my rates 50%. So anybody that hears this, just mention, I don't need a code word. Just say you heard me on the Cold Turkey podcast, and I'll be cutting your rate down 50%. So, I want to offer that to everybody just because I think this is just such a critical time and people need it. People need it and it's important. So
really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Joel. Thank you. Take care.
All right, brother. Bye.
Bye-bye.